Good evening, humans. Tonight I have an alien story. Here is the story. The Vanishing Hikers. I used to hike to prove something. Endurance, maybe. Or that I could be alone without feeling small. After my brother Ethan disappeared on his solo trip 3 years ago, I started taking his route, the way some people take communion, quietly, stubbornly, like it could close a wound by repetition. He vanished somewhere along the High Pine Loop, 18 miles of switchbacks, ravines, old logging roads, and half-collapsed fire tower gnawed by lightning. They never found gear, prints, phone, nothing. Like the trail exhaled and he was gone. Last October, right after the first frost, I decided to hike the loop with 2 friends who knew when to talk and when to shut up. Maya, a ranger trainee who could read tracks like paragraphs, and Thomas, who made documentaries and carried more batteries than food. "We're camping at the ravine," Maya said, in the lot, tapping the map. 4 miles in, then the ridge at sunrise. Weather's clear, wind from the north, easy. She looked at me as if she said it, voice calm, facts like fingers to hold. The first miles were all whispering pines and sun-cold air. Our steps clumped over old corduroy logs, embedded in the soil by men dead a century. Squirrels scolded us. Once 100 starlings lifted from an alder and tore the sky into ribbons. I kept waiting for the old fear to rise. It didn't. The trail felt indifferent, like a museum that would not move for grief. We found the ravine just before dusk, a gash in the earth 50 feet across, as if a giant had dragged a blade through the forest. On our side, spruce and bracken, a bluff of crumbly shale. On the far side, black birch and a single thin white pine standing apart, its trunk pale as a bone. There, Maya said, pointing to a flat spot under the spruce tent. Thomas set his camera on a log and filmed the shadows crawling up the opposite wall like ink in water. He didn't talk while he worked. That was his gift, letting silence do the heavy lifting. We ate dehydrated stew that tasted like wet cardboard, then sat in the purple dark and listened to the ravine breathe. That's when Thomas said, "Do you hear that?" At first I heard nothing but the small things, crickets, a twig snapping, wind skimming leaves. Then I noticed what was missing. No stream, no rush of water. The ravine was dry, the way mouths are dry right before they try to scream. "There should be seepage," Maya said softly, "after last week's rain." Thomas panned his camera across the gap. "Maybe it's run underground." "Maybe," Maya said, though the word didn't fit. I went to my sleeping bag before panic found me. I didn't dream. I woke to the sound of Thomas unzipping the tent. "What time is it?" I mumbled. 5:12, he whispered. "Blue hour. Get up." The world outside was made of granite. The world outside was made of graphite. The sky was a bruise. The ravine a darker one. Fog lay along the bottom like an animal that had gone to sleep there. Our breath was smoke. Birdsong hadn't started yet, which felt like an insult. We stood at the rim drinking gritty camp coffee that tasted faintly of cedar. Thomas fell in the fog with the greedy love he saved for every dawn. May scanned the ground, updating a mental ledger I could never read. "Look," she said, "on the far side of the ravine, just beyond the pale white pine, 3 figures stood shoulder to shoulder facing us. They were too still to be deer, too straight to be bushes, not moving, not shifting, not fidgeting the way humans do when they stand without talking. Just placed, 3 dark cutouts stamped against the fog." Thomas lifted his cameras. "Hikers," he breathed. "Hey," he called, voice breaking the morning like a plea. "Hello." The figures didn't wave, didn't turn. They remained shoulder to shoulder, heads tilted as if listening. I couldn't see faces, just silhouettes, long coats, packs. No, the outlines were wrong, too smooth, as if they hadn't put layers over bodies, but bodies over nothing. Trail spur over there, Thomas asked. There isn't, Maya said. That slope is steep till the ridge. Only crossing is the long bridge 2 miles north. She sounded distracted. Her eyes flicked to the white pine again, and I saw it then, how thin the trunk was. Slender as a dancer's wrist, one of those trees that look too fragile to shrug off snow. Maybe they're lost, I said. Wave them around. Maya cupped her hands and shouted, bridge to the left, 2 miles. Her voice slapped the ravine and came back slow. The fog didn't move, neither did they. Then altogether the 3 figures slid sideways. Not stepped, not walked, slid, smooth as magnets drawn under glass. Their feet, if they were feet, didn't lift. They moved in one continuous motion, perfectly synchronized under the middle one lined up with the white pine and passed behind it. It should have reappeared on the other side. The tree was too thin to hide anything. It didn't. The other 2 slid until they met the same single sliver of trunk and vanished behind it, one after the other, as if erased by a pencil. Thomas stopped filming. I heard the click. I heard one breathe. I heard Maya whisper, no. We waited. The fog thickened and thinned like something thinking. Nothing came out from behind the tree. Thomas whispered, it's a trick of perspective. Impossible, Maya said. Maybe there's a dip or a rock outcrop we can't see. We would still see motion, Maya said, and the clothes. She broke off. We crossed at the bridge. Her voice had that ranger tone clipped in crystal. We come down from the ridge and check the far rim. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say we should leave it alone. But there are some questions that will chill a person if you don't throw them meat. We packed up in under the 10 minutes, shoulders quick, fingers clumsy. The sky went from bruise to ghost. Birdsong arrived like a late apology. We moved fast along the rim till the ravine narrowed, and at an old spruce lay fallen like a rib across it. The trunk was slick with frost. Thomas went first, then me, then Maya bringing up the rear. The drop wasn't fatal, just the kind you might limp away from. The far side smelled different, older somehow, like rain that had never chosen to fall. The ground was spongy with decades of needles. We followed the rim south, back towards the white pine. As we walked, the soundscape thin, no crickets, no birds, no wind through black birch leaves. The quiet had weight, a lid. Thomas whispered, are we here, Les? Yes, I said. Stop, Maya said gently. We make a plan before we walk into whatever this is. We look for tracks, I said, trying to sound brave. 3 people, shoulder to shoulder. They were not people, Maya said, but yes, prints first, then the tree. The prints were easy at first, 3 pairs of impressions in dew-marked moss, heel to toe, spaced evenly as if on a rope line, but the details were wrong. No tread pattern, no edge, just depressions shaped like footprints drawn by a child. They continued for 40 feet, then stopped on bare rock, then did not start again. We stood there while my heartbeat tried to excavate my ribs. Wind could lift, fine, Maya said, but her voice had lost certainty, or maybe they. Shh, Thomas hissed. He pointed 20 yards ahead. The pale white pine rose alone, its bark bright in the muted light. It was smaller up close than it looked from our camp, 30 feet tall maybe, young, too young to carry anything more than a crow. I knew what we would find before we reached it. The world had already told me in language I didn't want to learn. Behind the tree, the forest went on with stupid normalcy. Ferns, saplings, fallen limbs, silvered by lichen. No ravine edge, no hidden path, no careen, no shadow. Thomas filmed the tree, hand steady. There has to be a line of sight trick. Maybe a third of the trunk is, his voice collapsed. He had circled to the side and crouched, camera inches from the bark. Maya, he said softly, get over here. The bark around the chest height was smooth white, except for three thin smears, no glazes. Imagine something warm sliding past and leaving a varnish that set into the wood. Each swath was the width of a shoulder. Maya didn't touch it. Zap, she asked it. She asked the air. From what? Thomas whispered. A tremble began deep in the ground, then a hush of movement like a small quake with the sound turned off. The white pine shivered, not like a tree, but like a creature tolerated chill. I felt a pressure in my ears, a soft pop. The air smelled briefly of ozone and wet iron, as when you bite your lip too hard. Back, Maya said, voice barely there, back away. We did. Steps careful like one and careful. Around dogs that do not wag. The forest exhaled, Ursula came back in drips. The world resumed being the world. We're leaving, Maya said. We nodded. We retraced our steps along the rim at the Spruce Long Bridge. Thomas stepped onto the trunk and stopped. Do you feel lighter? He asked. I didn't. I felt wrong. My cheeks prickled like I stuck my face in a cold sunlight. We crossed. Back at our camp spot, the ash of our fire had a thin crust of ice that wasn't there before. Our footprints from an hour earlier had softened like bread dough left too long. Time had stretched here, or folded, or maybe we had. We did not talk much on the hike out. Once Thomas tried, words fell like stones and did not bounce. At the lot, Maya took out our phones and put them aside by side on the hood. All three read 11:41 a.m. She clicked her wristwatch. It read 2:16 p.m. No, she said. We drove in silence to the town and bought 3 coffees. We did not drink. Thomas uploaded his footage at the cafe. The files transferred then corrupted, then returned as 0 bytes. When he tried to open a still, the image showed us as the ravine rim with nothing across but fog and pale white pine. He swore, but it was the kind of swear that sounds like prayer. We decided not to report any of it. To who? Hello, Ranger Office. Trees are swallowing shapes and returning time with the wrong edges. That night I sat on my apartment floor with Ethan's old map spread like a wound. His route was traced in red pencil, a line through the loop. Past the ravine, small X's where he stopped for water. He should have texted me from the ridge that day. He didn't. I had waited with my phone face up on my knee until the light went blue and then black. On and off and on, slept for 2 weeks. Things almost went back to normal, almost, until I woke up one night to the sound of something sliding. My heart learned a new step. It came from my hallway, a long, steady glide like fabric pulled across wood. The air in my room thin, not colder, not warmer, just less. You don't notice the weight of air until it's taken away. I stood with my ear to the door. The sound stopped. Hello, I said, because the human brain does not learn quickly. Maya? My throat worked around her name like around glass. Something tapped the door. Not a knock, a touch against my... Well, I opened it. The hallway was empty except for the cheap mirror at the far end that came with the apartment. In it I saw the reflection of the hallway I stood in. I saw my own face, moon pale and thinner than I remembered. I also saw for one sliced instant 3 figures standing shoulder to shoulder behind me in the reflected dark. smooth outlines without faces, long coats that were not fabric, heads tilted like birds. They did not appear in the air at my back, only in the mirror. They slid sideways in the glass until the center one lined up with the narrow strip of molding where my hallway turns. A white paint scar just wide enough to hide a hair. They passed behind it and did not come out. In my real hallway, nothing moved. I slept with the light on after that, though if light could save anyone, cemeteries would be empty. I didn't tell Maya or Thomas for months. I couldn't turn the story into sentences without tearing myself with it. When I finally called, Maya listened without interrupting. It tracked you, she said, or it marked you, maybe both. What do you think it is? I asked. She was quiet long enough that I thought the line had died. When she spoke, her voice was tired in a way I had not heard. I think there are places where the edges between zones are thin, like wet paper. Time, distance inside time. Maybe they aren't supposed to line up, but sometimes they do. Maybe those shapes aren't people at all. Maybe they are consequences. Consequences of what? Looking, she said. After we hung up, I sat with the map and a dull pencil. I pressed the lead into the pale white rectangle where the ravine should be and made a dot. I wrote Ethan. Then I erased it until the paper peeled and tore. I don't hike much now. Sometimes I dream of the white pine which has grown taller in my sleep. In the dream, a voice says my name in my brother's voice, and it comes from behind the trunk where something slick and tall has the right to wait. Other times I wake at exactly 5:12 to the sound of sliding, and when I check the mirror I see only myself, which is worse, because it means they have learned not to show me that they are there. I won't pretend I understand any of it. I know only this. Some gaps are not meant to be bridged. Some questions are holes, and there are things in the world that move sideways in pieces of time where we cannot follow. If you stand at the edge of a place that is too quiet, if you see three figures shoulder to shoulder across the void, and they start to slide, do not watch where they go. Do not wait for them to come out the other side. Turn around, leave the forest, and do not hang mirrors in your home. Did you find that spine tingling? If you did, like and subscribe. Have a scary night and spooky nightmares.